Welcome back to another episode of Front Row Cinema, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers. I'm your host, TJ Trimboli, and with me, as always, my co-host, a true sack of wine, Mr. James O'Reilly.
I did not expect that to be the direction you went. Who says that in the movie?
Brad Pitt says that when Agamemnon takes Rose Bryn, the girl that he's like claimed as his concubine, he takes her for like his own doing, and Brad Pitt like stalks off and goes, "You sack of wine."
Nice.
And it
Okay.
might be possibly the greatest insult I've ever heard levied at somebody in my entire life.
I can't think of a better one right now, so I'm gonna say you're right.
And I will be using that for the foreseeable future for anyone who wants to test me in the year of our Lord 2025. So at
Yeah.
me, bro.
Why is it a bad thing? Is he saying he's a drunk? Is that what he means? Like his body is just like a sack for holding wine because he just gets
Yes.
drunk all the
Yeah.
time? Like,
He's
is
just
that
like
what
a
he's going for?
he's just a bloated mess, a true sack of wine. You slap that belly and it just rolls on for miles.
Jeez. Okay. I mean, all right. It's a pretty good insult. I take it back. I
It's
wasn't sure how, but I think you've opened my eyes.
I got you there. And each week we take a look at my 1,000 movies I've seen in theaters and we see how well it's aged, along with the hype surrounding the film, its box office analysis, and legacy in the film industry. So if you enjoy this kind of content, hit that sub button on YouTube, leave that 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's how you help the channel grow. Jim, what are we watching tonight?
We're watching maybe the seminal early 2000s historical fiction drama, Troy.
It's a mouthful. Yes, the 2004 genre that is lost to time, the sword and sandal epic directed by Wolfgang Peterson, written by David Benioff, and starring Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, Orlando Bloom, and Diane Kruger. Now we got our DVD cover here, Jim, to bust out, but I thought it'd be good use here, but apparently it's not because there is no log line on the back. It just lists the people who are in it and tells you to dive deeper into the heart of battle. Doesn't
Yeah, I
really
mean,
help us here.
if you're watching Troy, like you have to know what the Iliad is, right? Like
You would
it's like
think so, but for any of you at home that don't know, we got a little log line here off the internet called An Adaptation of Homer's Great Epic. The film follows the assault on Troy by the United Greek Forces.
ooh,
Short, sweet, and to the point right there. Did
United Greek
you?
Forces sound like the bad guys in a European RoboCop remake. It's like it's
Sure, why not? Did you?
It's just like a very modern way to say it. I don't know. I don't think that's what they would have called themselves back then.
I don't know. Well, that's the UGF. You wouldn't call them that.
Yeah.
Were you? Did you read Homer's Iliad at any point in your life?
No, I've never read it.
This or the Odyssey?
I've heard of both of them. I know a lot of the ins and outs of the Odyssey specifically.
No.
Actually, the closest I've gotten to reading the Odyssey is my girlfriend really likes this one like songwriter who for years has been writing like incremental rock opera of the Odyssey.
There we go.
So,
That'll do it.
so I know a lot of like what happens in the Odyssey. I've never actually read that or the Iliad, but I do like just from like being a person that's alive, I know like the gist of what they are, right?
Who is the songwriter writing this rock opera?
Mr. Jalapeno is what most people call him, but I can look up his real name if you like.
Jim, I think Mr. Jalapeno is all I need. That
That's
sounds. I
that's
don't know that I
exactly what
want.
I said.
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
don't
nope,
know that I
Mr.
want.
Jalapeno will do.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to know that man's real name. I'd like to continue to live in the world where that man is simply known as Mr. Jalapeno, writing rock operas about Homer's Odyssey. And that's a world I could live in. How do you feel? Do we think the Sword and Sandal epic is going to be making a return now that Christopher Nolan is making an adaptation of the Odyssey?
I think that this is a pretty good example of Christopher Nolan, I think, just gets to do whatever he wants at this point. So, like, if
True.
Christopher Nolan comes in and is like, hey, I want to adapt the Odyssey starring Matt Damon. People are like, all right, yeah, cool, whatever. Like,
Yeah,
we've
I
shown
mean,
Christopher Nolan.
if a man who can make a 3 hour movie about the scientists that created the atom bomb and get that movie to make almost $1 billion, that dude's allowed to do whatever he wants.
That's what, right. That's what I mean. So like, I don't think I think there'll be two types that you see. I think there'll be very schlocky like movies that I have no interest in seeing, and then you'll see movies like where Christopher Nolan just comes in and wants to adapt the Odyssey, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead, you're Christopher Nolan, go for it."
Thinking
I
of the
don't know
schlocky
that it's
one,
ever gonna be like what it used to be, if
what it
that makes
was.
sense.
Now, when you were thinking about the schlocky one just now, in your head, you were thinking about the Ben-Hur remake, weren't you? I know you were.
That was one of them, and then the other one was with what was the movie? Is it called Exodus, where Christian Bale plays Noah? And,
Jim,
like,
don't you dare forget that subtitle, Gods and Kings.
of course, Gods and Kings, right?
We
But yeah,
honor the subtitle here.
and like even that one, like that's even like pretty big budget because you have like Christian Bale in it, right?
And
But
Christian
like yeah,
Bale,
like that's the kind of movie I think you'll see where it's like almost like 300 levels of silly in like a sword and sandal movie as opposed to something like more serious like the original Ben-Hur.
it's fair. I think I like to live in a world where both exist, because those schlocky ones sometimes are enjoyable to watch. But I would just be happy to see a sword and sandal again. So I was very excited when Christopher Nolan announced that he was doing the Odyssey because that's going to be super cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean like the other one that comes to mind because I actually watched it pretty recently was Clash of the Titans.
Classic. Now, are you talking the original or are we talking Sam Worthington Clash
The
of the
Sam
Titans?
Worthington Clash
All
of the
right. Now,
Titans. Yeah,
did you watch the sequel, Wrath of the Titans?
I did not. No,
Oh,
I've not
Jim,
seen the sequel.
Jim, what are we doing with our lives here, buddy?
But yeah, as we're talking about this, I'm kind of wondering if they've ever went away. You know what I mean? Or if they're just not movies that you and I take particularly seriously anymore. You know what I mean?
No, I would say we haven't really like because even the Clash of the Titans one we just said it was early 2010s. So
Right.
I
That's
think
what
there's
it was
been a
all
big
before.
deficit in the last like 5 to 10 years of getting
Yeah.
any of them.
You can
Um,
probably only get away with making so many Clash of the Titans and Exodus God and Kings before you're like, do we really want to keep doing this? Like, is this really working for anybody?
the answer, Hollywood, is yes. We do want you to keep doing this. I now did you see come to the theaters with us for this movie?
I don't remember.
I
I
know I
know that I saw this movie and in theaters. It might have been one I saw with my dad though, because this is the kind of movie where my dad would have talked my ear off about how it was an adaptation of the Iliad and how he would want to go see it.
yeah. Because I'm trying to remember and I remember me and Ryan at least, but I don't remember if anyone else came with us because I have two childhood memories of Troy. And the first is me and Ryan going to see it, and I don't remember if anyone else was also coming with us. But my second memory, and an even better one, is when they first released Troy on DVD, the director's cut, and I went and bought it, and these girls were having a party, and they were trying to get me and Ryan to go, and we refused to go because we had to watch the 3 hour version of Troy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a great decision, first of all, because
They were like, "You could come over and put it on here." We were like, I'm not falling for that trap."
yeah, because I want to watch Troy with you guys. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
And we cuddled up in my living room on my couch and we watched the 3 hour masterpiece that was the director's cut of Troy.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know if I've ever seen the director's cut.
Oh, Jim, it is something. It was actually something troubling for me when I went to watch this movie for this pod, because my DVD, I had the director's cut DVD, which I would assume would have both versions of Troy, but it only has the director's cut. And I didn't want to watch the director's cut for this
Oh yeah,
episode because I wanted, obviously, to watch
right,
the theatrical version that I saw back in the day. So
right.
I had to pay $2 to watch the original theatrical version.
Aha, you've come down to my level.
Yeah, they got me. Those fuckers pulled me in.
I am pretty sure I watched the theatrical cut, and I actually know that I actually had the DVD this time because I
Oh,
recently introduced this movie to my girlfriend, and she was a big fan of it. And I've seen it, I want to say 4 times since Thanksgiving. So it's
bust those
like,
numbers up, bro. Those are rookie numbers.
yeah, and it was like I bought her the DVD for Christmas, so I'm pretty sure it was the theatrical cut.
Would cream if I opened up a Christmas present that had Troy in it.
Yeah, no comment.
We've talked a little bit about it now. The dearth of sword and sandal movies that we've gotten in the 2010s. And for a lot of people, this is kind of the movie that they point to as the start of the death of the sword and sandal movie. So I think we should turn our attention to some box office numbers and see if that quite comes to fruition there, that these movie in particular started the death of the sword and sandal epic.
Numbers, dates, and numbers, numbers, dates, array, dates, numbers. Show me the money.
All right. So, as always, we're going to talk a little bit about the budget to start. And I think we might be on to something about why this is the start of the death of the Sword and Sandal
Yeah, all
movie.
right, let's see. How much money they throw at this in 2004?
It has the budget listed at $175 million. dollars.
For 2004, that's fucking absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like one of the bigger ones we've seen, and it's something that you hear about these kinds of movies all the time, is that they're incredibly expensive to make. These kind of
Yeah.
old school ancient period pieces.
I mean, it makes sense because you're building these crazy physical sets. We've got these big, huge, larger than life actors. Like we need hundreds upon hundreds of extras. This is a tall order production, no matter
Yeah.
what point in time you make it.
Yeah, and you're filling like you need to order like tons of ancient armor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
You got to
it's like
have
if
like
you're just making a movie with people like in business suits, you probably have a bunch of those like around, or you can probably just tell people like, yeah, wear a business suit to the like, you know what I mean? Um,
you also
this
need a
movie, like all of the
stable,
extras need to be outfitted in like
yeah,
a full set of
full
ancient Greek
regalia.
armor.
Yeah.
Like
You need a stable of horses on retainer.
right, right, and all that comes through. You're filming like huge, large scale battles, which probably take like days and days and days to
Yeah.
get done. You know?
You have to probably take months of pre-production training your actors for the fight scenes.
Right, right. So the $175 million budget is what all that leads to, right?
Oh yeah.
And not to mention, you have some pretty big stars in this movie. Like Orlando Bloom is starting to break out at this point. Brad Pitt's obviously a big name.
Dude,
Eric Bana's coming off the Hulk, but we'll forgive him for that.
he really comes
Which is
back. He
actually,
he performs in this movie like he's got an axe to grind off a Hulk.
yeah, and right, by the way, it's not the Hulk, it's just Hulk, I think is
Just
what we learned last time we were
they
looking.
call it actually Ang Lee's Hulk.
Oh, Ang Lee's Hulk.
Put some respect on that.
From
Did
the
did
mind of Ang Lee.
did anyone have a better 0304 than Orlando Bloom?
I don't
Pirates,
know.
Return of the King, Troy.
That's an interesting question. I would need to look into it to give you a good answer because I would say almost definitely somebody did. But that is a pretty good three movie. Like the Lord of the Rings Return of the King comes out and that's off the back of the first two. You got the first Pirates movie and Troy. That's pretty tough to beat. Yeah. You're onto something there.
It's just stupid successful right there. It's that's incredible.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I mean, like, all right, just because, again, I can't think of anybody to disprove you, so I'm going to say yes. Orlando Bloom had the greatest 2003 of all time.
Orlando Bloom, we're
What
giving
year
you the
was SWAT? I don't know. Maybe
SWAT. Shut up.
Colin Farrell got his own category at the Mexican MTV Movie Awards. I mean,
Don't make me
like
mute you.
Orlando Bloom's doing great, but come on, he didn't get una película with Colin Farrell as a category.
It's true. I mean, it's tough to get an Uno pellicular. It's that's a tough.
It's like it's like up there with the EGAT, you know? Like um, but with all that said, Troy is going to open the weekend of May 14th through the 16th. So we're in kind of more like prime summer movie territory. I think last time we were looking at ones that came out in March or so, we were talking about how we're not quite into the summer yet. We're in the summer. Like May 14th, we're post Memorial Day is the one in May.
Well, you try that one again. How are we post Memorial Day on May 14th?
Isn't it like early May that Memorial Day happens?
Oh my God, bro. All right, we're taking you back to school.
What is it, like the end
Get,
of May or
get
something?
in the car. I'll be right there to get you.
Hold on a second.
It's
Hold
like
on. Hold please.
it's usually either the last weekend in May or the second to last weekend in May.
All right, fair. 2025 Memorial Day, May 26th. You're right. Who can keep track? I don't memorialize anything, okay? So we're not post Memorial Day, but we're getting there. We're in May, which to me means we're in summer movie season. Troy is gonna open number one with $46.9 million.
Man, for the cost of that movie, 46.9 is not where you want to be landing. You have a smaller opening weekend than the previous weekends. Van Helsing's 51.
Right.
And that 46.9 is putting us in the 23rd spot behind the Fellowship of the Rings 47.2 and just ahead of Curse of the Black Pearls 46.6. So you really got to hope, like Curse of the Black Pearl, you got good reviews and great word of mouth that you're going to explode onto screens for the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about how that was a failure for Van Helsing because they had spent 160 million. So we're in even worse territory here, right?
Not great.
Made less and spent more.
You got
So,
five of my dollars from that weekend.
yeah, right. Is that how much the ticket was? Gosh, that sounds crazy.
575. I don't have my ticket stub again this week because it also succumbed to the same water damage that Van Helsing did last week. But we'll be back next week. I will have my ticket stub for next week.
Okay, all right. If you say so, I'll believe it when I see it.
I do say so.
It
Hey,
beats
right
out
now.
it beats out the second week of Van Helsing, which we would have talked about at 20.7 million, and Mean Girls is down here in third. Man on Fire is still floating around here in the top five in its fourth week. And then it shares an opening weekend. We talked a little bit about this movie, A Day Without a Mexican.
Oh, gee. Like, what? I already forgot what that was.
It was like a weird, like almost like PSA kind of movie where like somebody woke up in California and like all the Mexicans were gone.
Oh,
Which
yeah. And there was like no one to till the fields and everything, right?
right, which is like it's also like kind of racist because I'm sure there's more like people in California who are like from
Not doing
Central and
that.
South America who are not Mexican, like for one thing. But in 2004, white people didn't know that. They didn't
Are,
know.
are you sure the Daily Wire didn't go back in time and make that movie?
I mean, maybe. Yeah, it's kind of like it's like their Citizen Kane. It's like really seminal cinema for them. They're
They
like,
got a
oh
poster
man,
of it hanging up in the front office.
if only. Um, it's, it also shares an opening weekend, rounding out the top five with Breaking All the Rules, or sorry, Breaking All the Rules. There's no G in Breaking.
Oh, okay. What, they get the little like apostrophe after the end?
Yeah,
Breaking
yeah, yeah.
all the rules.
Breaking all the rules. And then, so not really much going on. Going into weekend two, Troy is going to drop a whopping 48.9% down to 20, like just a shade under $24 million. Dollars.
It's not above 50 though. So that's not atrocious of a drop. It's not
It's pretty
amazing.
bad.
It's not amazing,
It's
but
pretty bad.
it could be worse.
I think it basically guarantees that you're not going to get your 175 million back at the domestic box office, but I
Yeah,
don't
well,
know.
not
Maybe we'll
domestically.
see, right?
They gotta really hope for that international market.
It's gonna lose to a movie which I am assuming is gonna be our next episode.
Uh, let's hear it.
Shrek 2?
Oh, Jimbo, you know it, baby.
Yeah, I kind of figured you would have saw this.
Yeah. Did you not come with us for this one? I could have sworn Shrek 2 was like all hands on deck, all the boys represented.
I don't know. I'm not sure I was really hanging out with you guys at this point, because like 2004.
Definitely were. It was the three of us. It was you, me, and Ryan all the time, at the very least.
Were we in high school yet?
Yeah, in 2004. Are you okay?
Because I'm pretty sure that I didn't start. Well, dude, I don't remember when the fuck I went to high school. Who knows?
We were about to finish ninth grade at this point in time.
Yeah, so I think it's like that summer slash into the September of this year that I really start hanging out with you guys. I don't know if I was in the gang yet in like to May of 2004, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And I guess it all starts to bleed together after a while that you can't remember the exact timelines. But yeah, I guess that would track because I guess maybe when we started doing those sleepovers, it was over the summer.
Yeah, I mean, like I know it's like imminent. Like I know we start hanging out with each other around then, but it's like I think it's sometime within the next like 4 months or so that we start really seeing each other regularly. I don't know. Like I'm sure we're like aware of each other at this point, but I don't think we're quite like super duper friendly yet, if that makes sense.
Well, we were hanging out in our classes at least because the three of us bonded over study hall in ninth grade when Ryan showed up without eyebrows.
Oh yeah. Well,
That was
no, but
that
see,
was when
I
we
think I
bonded.
had other classes with Ryan. I
We
don't know
did.
if I was in your study hall. I think we were both aware that he had no eyebrows from like different realms, you know.
Well,
Whatever.
however it came to
That's
fruition, this was the summer of love for the three of
This
us.
is
This is
so far from the point. I'm
we've
pretty sure I wasn't at Shrek 2 with you guys.
interesting. We'll have to look at the back of the ticket stub next week, and we'll find out for sure.
Yeah. I'm also, regardless of what the ticket stub says, I will stand by my assertion that I did not go see Shrek 2 with you.
Jim, the ticket stub don't lie.
I don't know about that. I cannot say. But I'm not going to go into the number for Shrek 2. It obviously opens number 1 and it beats the shit out of Troy.
Ooh, tough loss,
Van
Troy.
Helsing's down in third. We've talked about that, and we've talked about a lot of this week already because of the Van Helsing run. So I'm just going to keep chugging along here. We're going to follow Troy. Weekend three, it gets that 50% drop down to just a bit under 12 million, like 11.9 and change.
Now,
Uh,
is this what they call Memorial Day weekend, Jim?
I think it must be. Well, no, is it May 28th through the 30th? Memorial Day weekend was probably the previous weekend, right? I don't know. You're the
Probably.
Memorial Day weekend expert. When
It
was
was
it?
it was probably for Shrek. Shrek 2 seems like a perfect movie for a Memorial Day weekend.
Let's see. Yeah, no,
Call
you're
it.
right. It's the
Call.
28th through the
That's it.
31st is Memorial Day weekend. You really are the Memorial Day
I
weekend
am the
expert.
Memorial Day king. Listen, I ain't been eating burgers and dogs for nothing.
So stupid. Memorial Day. Who cares about that day anyway? Uh,
Oh, hey, hey, guy. Oh,
Look, you know why I don't care about that day? Because I care about the troops every day. There's nothing special about Memorial Day for me, bro. They're always in my heart and mind.
for Jimbo, every day is Memorial Day.
Yeah, exactly. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, dude. Uh, it's,
I just like the barbecues, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When you
Week
support the
4.
troops, life's a barbecue,
Uh,
bro. That's
Life's a barbecue, dig it?
yeah.
I think
So
Joe Dirt
weekend,
said that.
yeah, weekend three, we said it drops down to just a bit below 12 million, edging out, coming in fourth place, a movie that I don't think gets nearly enough love, with just a bit under 11 million, the opening weekend of Raising Helen.
Oh my god. You're
Like,
obsessed with that movie.
dude, I love that movie. It's an
You do.
all-time classic movie.
You do. You love that movie.
It's like
Obsessed.
it's like the original Instant Family. It's like Instant Family totally ripped off Raising Helen.
Wait, you're telling me Mark Wahlberg can't make an original movie? I'm shocked.
Also, it beats out that weekend the number five movie Soul Plane from
Oh, dude.
MGM.
Another classic right there. That's a great movie.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if this one is gonna come up on our radar at all. It's another
Okay.
one I would almost guess that you saw. Like I'm almost sure that you did see it. The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, Jim, we'll be
Have
doing the
I
day
mapped
after
out our
tomorrow.
next two episodes? This is
You
getting
have
crazy.
now tracked the next two episodes.
See, this is why we weren't hanging out yet. Because I was going to see peak cinema like Raising Helen that weekend, and you were going to did the disaster movie Schlock like the day after
Are
tomorrow.
gonna sit there and disrespect not only Roland Emmerich, but prime Dennis Quaid. You're gonna look me in the eyes right here.
Yeah.
Sacrilege.
I
Sacrilege.
mean, if you think the day after tomorrow is prime Dennis Quaid, that's your business. That is,
Prime. Prime Dennis Quaid in this era right here, Jim. Man was looking great, handsome as ever, top star. Man
crazy.
got top billing over Jake Gyllenhaal. Top.
The the end of prime Dennis Quaid was the rookie.
All right, guy.
After the rookie, everything was downhill, and everything before the rookie was pretty great. I'm not gonna lie.
Rookie was like the year prior to the day after tomorrow. That
Yeah,
man is in peak living right
right.
there.
So we're in my book, we are out of Dennis Quaid's peak, and we
You're
are at the
you're
start
crazy.
of we are at the start of his decline.
You're like his start was Jaws 3D, and then the peak was the rookie.
No, the rookie wasn't the peak. It was the end of like his peak. He had a run. Don't get me wrong.
That run is
Frequency is probably his peak.
that was
Yeah,
before.
try and argue with that, big guy.
Frequency was good. I would argue that the man is still in his peak. Have you seen Reagan? Like, come on, Jim.
No, I have not seen Reagan. I will never see Reagan. I have a king. Thank you very much. I don't need to see Reagan.
Oh, all right.
um, moving into weekend four, Troy is gonna drop another 50% down to just a bit under 6 million, like 5.9 and change. We're down in fifth place. It's not going great. It's not
Doesn't
going
sound
great.
like it.
You would expect it, or at least hope that it would be getting more business this far into its run in the summer. And it's also like making me question when they release this, because we talked about Trek 2, which was obviously going to be a huge box office movie. We talked about The Day After Tomorrow, which, say what you will about it, whether you like it or not, obviously was probably going to do pretty well, right? And then this week, which again I'm assuming is going to be our next episode, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban opens.
Oh, you know it, big boy. I know for a fact you were at that one.
Sure, let's say I was. let's I don't think
Search,
I was.
search your feelings, Luke. You know it to be
You
true.
know it to be true. I might have been. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah,
But
stacked few weeks right here.
right, so like you're really putting a lot on the line here for Troy, and you're probably banking on Brad Pitt, and it's not working out for you so good.
Not only banking on Brad Pitt, you're banking on shirt Brad Pitt for like the entire movie.
I mean, yeah, which was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm just saying.
I enjoyed it.
And then let's just ride it out of the top 10 because we're kind of starting to drop like a rock here, and I'm just gonna plot out the next 10 episodes if we keep going. um, Weekend five drops another 42.8% down to 3.4 million. It's in eighth place.
Can I get one more?
Weekend six, it drops down to 10th for
Ooh.
1.7 million. And weekend seven, it pulls in a whopping $957,000 to fall down to 14th place.
That is a bummer. So Troy gonna settle in the 6 week club with other notable movies that we've done in this league, like Terminator 3, SWAT, and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So some interesting
Actually, like,
company.
really, like, good company, I would say. It fits those movies a lot, I would think. Like, Troy is to Sword and Sandals movies what SWAT is to action movies, like action police movies, right? Aren't they kind of the same thing?
Yeah, in a sense, they're big and bombastic and loud. Now, Jim, one thing before you give us the totals here that we have to add, that $175 million budget that you said,
Yeah.
is now good enough to beat our Van Helsing one for the bronze. Van Helsing was sitting with the bronze for the most expensive movie ever made with 160, and now Troy can overtake it to hold on to that bronze.
Wow. Yeah. So right, two back-to-back weeks where we had like pretty underwhelming high-cost movies. And like
Yeah,
this isn't like the box office these days where like no movies do good and like maybe like one movie a summer makes a lot of money.
yeah,
This is like there's still people being successful at the box office. It's just not Van Helsing and Troy.
just not them. And it is crazy that once upon a time we could have a lineup where every week big, huge hitters stepping up to plate. Now we get a hitter every couple of weeks if we're lucky.
Yeah. Every couple of weeks sounds like really high. It seems like it's way less than that. Um, so let's get into the totals. Domestic, it finishes well below that 175 million with 133.4 million.
Ooh.
International, and this part is interesting to me because I think part of the reason you're making an adaptation of Troy is not to appeal to Americans, who on this show we have called like super ignorant, super dumb, probably not interested in adaptations of the Iliad. You're
Probably never even
probably
read
trying
the
to
Iliad.
right. These days, I bet you could find a lot of people who don't even know what it is. Like like I think if you asked around like a bunch of 25-year-olds, they would have no clue what you're talking about.
But
They'd
like,
be like,
what'd you
"Homer?
say?
You mean like from The Simpsons?"
The Iliad? What kind of language you speaking, boy?
Right. So I do think, though, that this is the kind of movie you're making because you think you can tap into an international market, which probably does know what the Iliad is and might be interested in seeing it, you know? International, it finishes with 364 million, which feels like not a terrible number.
No, that's not
For
bad.
a worldwide total of 497.4, which when you put both these together is a pretty terrible number, I think, for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely probably were hoping for a lot more out of this, but it's not as doom and gloom. That international number really helped save it. And it still finishes as the eighth highest grossing film of 2004. So it's not a total loss.
No, not a total loss. And I mean, I will say we did compare it a lot to Van Helsing. It basically doubles Van Helsing's international number, and beats it by about 200 million worldwide. So like, I do think this is not quite the flop and failure that Van Helsing is. I also think, and we'll probably talk a lot more about this later, it's a much more enjoyable movie. Like, so that helps.
That definitely helps proceedings that you can actually sit through this movie. But yeah, I would imagine, especially after whatever marketing costs they sunk into this and everything, if they did make any money, it was probably not until the home video sale.
Yeah, which I would bet you it did pretty well in home video
Oh,
because
I'm sure. And especially if
this
they,
movie does have a kind of like, at least in the circles I run in, people like this movie.
yeah.
So
And
I just bought a home video copy of it like 2 months ago. So
and they still have the regular DVD plus then a few months after that drop the director's cut DVD. So there you're getting multiple times that people are buying this movie.
right, right, exactly.
Because yeah, because I tell you, I had the regular DVD, and then I bought the director's cut and sold my regular one. Kicking myself now because I had to spend $2 to watch the regular one. What's the matter with
I'm
me?
interested to see. Were you able to like? When was the last time you watched the director's cut?
Uh, so Jim, I'm a sick individual. I watched the theatrical cut the other night to get ready for that, and then the next night I watched the director's cut.
Nice. So what was in the director's cut?
So for the direct, it's not a lot. Mostly what it is they just add a couple of more scenes of a few of the different characters interacting to let you kind of get a bit more characterization out of them.
Okay.
And then they up a lot of the blood in a lot of the scenes. Like the scenes are a
Oh,
lot more
nice.
violent. And then the opening is different. So the way the theatrical one opens is it just opens on like a random field, and you get that voiceover from Sean Bean talking about like legacy and
Right,
everything,
and like
and then it cuts.
immortality. And,
Yeah. In the director's cut, it opens on a dog that's just walking through a battle that's already taken place, and he's coming across all these dead bodies. And that has Sean Bean's voiceover to it, and then it goes to them walking up on to face wherever they are, whatever spot of Greece that they're fighting at. So it's
yeah,
like little things that just like add flavor to it.
it's
So that they're
interesting.
not like
This
huge changes.
I wonder. This movie's already rated R, but I wonder if they were gonna have some trouble with like putting like thousands of dead bodies and a bunch of blood and guts in it, and that's why that stuff's not in there. Because like
Yeah.
usually that's the
There's
kind of thing where I would say like, oh, they probably took all that out so they could get PG-13, but this movie's still rated R.
Yeah, it's so yeah, I guess maybe they just wanted more rated R-ness. I don't know. Also two notable things they also do that one I like and one I dislike. The one I dislike is that they change the music for the fight between Hector and Achilles, which I think is
Interesting.
fucking terrible because those bongos for that fight, fucking incredible. Absolutely
That's
fucking
interesting.
incredible.
So what kind of music did the director's cut have in it?
So in the director's cut, they
Was it?
actually used
It was.
Danny
Hold on.
El.
Let me guess. Let me guess. It was. Can you take me higher by Creed?
No, dude, imagine. Honestly, what they did is not far off. They used Danny Elfman's theme from Planet of the Apes.
No way. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, yeah. Fucking hate it. I hate it. I hate that. But then the one that I do like, the cut that they made, is they got rid of Josh Groban's silly ass song from the end credits.
Okay, that is pretty good. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take that.
yeah. And then
That is silly.
the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head now is that scene where Diane Kruger takes off her shirt when she's gonna like rail Orlando Bloom at the beginning, and the director's cut. We get to see a party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but like
bit more nudity on that front because there's
you
no
see what I'm
nudity.
saying though? Like a lot of the stuff you're telling me that got cut seems like it's to take out nudity and violence, and I just like I wonder if the issue like because it's rated R, so I wonder if the issue is like the MPAA was like, listen, you guys are cruising for no rating at all. Like you need to tighten up over there. Because
Lock it
it's just
up, boys.
interesting to me that that's the stuff that gets cut because it feels like that's usually the kind of stuff you see in these kind of sword and sandal movies, like especially when they're rated R.
So I don't know what their decision was in like cutting that stuff to still get an R rating because normally you'd cut that stuff to get a PG-13 because even with it added, it's no more violent than any other violent R-rated movie I've seen.
The movie that keeps coming to mind for me is Braveheart, which has like all of that stuff, right? Like, like Braveheart's like super violent, and I'm pretty sure there's like girls taking their shirts off in it.
A lot of man ass in Braveheart too.
Yeah, so it's just I don't know. Those are all very interesting choices to me.
So there was it was interesting to see those things removed for whatever reason. So I don't know what their decision was. And I think honestly it probably hurt them in the long run because the reception was a little all over the place. 53% from critics, they were not jamming on it. But 73% from the audience. The
Audiences love it.
audience knew
Yeah,
what
of
was
course
what.
they
They were
did. Yeah.
like, "Shut up, critics. You don't know what you're talking about." A 7.3 from IMDb, and unfortunately, a death sentence, Jim, a B cinema score.
Oof. Is that the worst cinema score we've had yet?
No, I believe we saw a B minus for something, but I can't tell you what movie it was off the top of my head.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna get a B, you might as well just get an F. It's like, it's like,
So
what are we even doing?
as far as cinema score is concerned, you might as well have. And then we got some user reviews here, Jim. Some people came out to play today. We start, as always, with our number oneers here, and they write, "This movie is full of mistakes. One, at the time of the War of Troy, there was not cavalry because horses were not mounted at the time. Two, the armors, the helmets, and the shields were different, as those described by Homerus in use about in the 1250 BC. Three, first man reaching the shore of Troy was Lolao, Then the army changed his name in Protesilaeo, meaning first among the people, saving the Achilles' life on behalf of a prediction about the death of the first man landing at Troy. 4. There is a big confusion between the ages Mycenaeans, Greeks, Hellenic age, and so on. 5. Buildings, constructions, and temples are not of this age. This movie is a real disappointment. Sincerely, Protesiliano.
Yeah, first of all, that sounds like a review Protesliano would leave. That sounds like. But no, I had a feeling we were gonna get a bunch of shit like this in the 1-star reviews, where like, sorry, I hate to break it to you, Prestiliano, but nobody gives a shit about what you're talking about. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares that the buildings aren't real, that there was no cavalry. I don't know or care what ancient Greek armor looked like. I do not care. That's not why
like
they're making this movie. And your disappointment is your fault, sir.
like
Like,
you're an idiot. I tried to avoid too many because obviously we knew there was going to be a bunch of 1 stars where they're like they didn't follow the Iliad to a T.
right, right.
But this one felt important to add because this is not the first time we've seen somebody be mad at a movie for historical inaccuracies. This reminds me of the Pirates of the Caribbean guy who did not like it because cannonballs would not shoot like that. So
Right.
this guy had to be mentioned. But also, there's debate as to whether any of this stuff actually happened anyway. So what the fuck are you talking about, guy?
I don't know, like, I think that they did eventually, like, find remains of the city of Troy. Like, as far as I know, like, they know it was a real place, and they're pretty sure that, like, something happened. But yeah, like, this is back, like, Homer isn't necessarily telling you, like, an accurate history, right? Like, he's writing a story about something that happened. So, like, I agree with you. Like, who knows how accurate what he wrote was. And also, if you want 100% truthful and faithful adaptation to the thing Homer wrote, I got news for you. The Iliad's in the public domain. You could just go read it, like for free. Like, what's the point of adapting things if we're just gonna remake 100% accurate? Like, you're not adapting anything at that point.
It's just like it's a case of you need to know where to pick your battles on stuff like this. Like there's no need to get bent out of shape on a movie because the helmet wasn't historically accurate to your like. Like I couldn't imagine sitting down to watch Troy, like, and you're watching a sick fight scene between Eric Bana and Brad Pitt, and you're just fuming because you're like, it's not the sword they would use. Sword's not even the right color. Like the shield, what are we talking about here? Like this fucking movie sucks. Like it's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see any difference between the like that helmet's not right or Achilles wasn't the first one who landed on Troy. Like I don't care if you want like certain aspects of the story even to be faithful. They're the same thing to me. Like the whole point is someone now who is different than the guy who made this thing thinks that there's a piece of art in there that they can make and they're going to make it how they want to make it, and you should just like go into things like this knowing that they're not necessarily trying to make the thing that exists in your head and put it on screen, right?
Making the thing that exists in their head. And then it's up to you to decide if you like it or not. But to not like it because of such trivial things like that is a little bit absurd. We
Yeah, and I
have,
got news for you.
yeah,
When you're adapting things into a Hollywood movie, Brad Pitt is going to do things, not some guy that I've never heard of. And like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like just because it happened in the Homer story that way, they're paying Brad Pitt a lot of money. He's landing on the beach first, and he's doing something epic when he gets there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Like we got Brad Pitt, we're gonna fucking use Brad Pitt. Like you bet your ass we're gonna use Brad Pitt. We have our next person here who is now going to be able to say that we are able to say we have our second recording usage of this word. And they write, this is the most terrible rape of a classic
Oh
epic
my god.
Hollywood has ever managed to produce. So bad, so much money has gone to waste. Nothing of the original spirit of Homer has survived. Watch Iraq. The US of A is nothing more than a degenerate state doomed for destruction. By the way, I'm not a religious person. Just watching matter-of-factly the
Oh,
situation,
thank
the
you for
one
clearing
and
that
yeah,
up.
just watching matter-of-factly the situation the one and only superpower is in. The movie is in a more objective sense, just not so good. And that is an understatement. Peterson has proved with his recent projects that psychological story development doesn't interest him at all. All I can say is, it shows. I slept for an hour during the premiere. Once again, don't spend any money on this film.
Okay, so there's a couple of like fair things in there, I think, right? You're allowed to not like it. That's fine. You know what I mean? You want to sleep during the premiere, great. But all that other stuff,
What's that shit about Vietnam?
what are we talking about? Like, what
Like,
are we talking about? The degradation of the US state, like from
uh,
the movie Troy? What do you mean, dude?
listen, they're just watching
Yeah.
matter-of-factly the
Did he say
situation that they're in.
Iraq? Did I catch that right? He said Iraq, like the country Iraq.
No, I guess there's another adaptation of it called Iraq, IRAK, but I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Why do you think that there's another adaptation of it? What does he reference when he
So he
says that?
goes, nothing of the original spirit of Homerus survived. Watch Iraq. That would assume to me that they've watched something that has the original spirit of Homerus's tale. But I think I might be giving them too much credit on their sentence structure.
I'm
And
pretty sure they just spelled Iraq wrong. Like,
yeah, that's I now feel like they're saying watch Iraq because then they go into the US of A as nothing more than a degenerate state doomed for destruction.
right, that's
So
we're
like
correct.
they're
I'm
pointing
pretty sure they
to
just
Iraq.
spelled the name of the country Iraq wrong, which I
They
would say
use
is very different than spelling current countries accurately is more important to me than how faithful to Homer you are in your adaptation of the Iliad.
just everything about this person's sentence structure is now making me have an aneurysm.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. And like, it's fine if you don't like it. It's fine if you don't like it. But I think you're kind of a nudge if you don't like it because you're like, it doesn't uphold the spirit of Homer's vision. It's like, dude, first of all, the Homer's like 4,000 years old at this point. And again, just go read the Iliad if that's what you want to do. Like, what did you expect from this Hollywood movie starring Brad Pitt? I don't get it.
I don't know. People are well, this person looked like they went in with agenda from the get-go. They were like, how can I equate this to modern day politics?
Right.
It was like, I don't know, maybe don't.
Yeah. And also, the people like going into different countries and starting fights are like kind of the bad guys in this movie. Like, I don't know that I would say that there's any kind of like pro USA slant, which I don't know if that's what they really meant because it was hard to understand what they were really getting at.
You know, but also it's just like people have been fighting each other since the dawn of time. Like, do we really got to equate it to like modern day America? Like it was just like, yeah, two people went to war. Like it
Yeah.
happens.
But we'll talk more about it later. We'll talk more
We'll
about it
get
later.
there later. All right. We got another one star here. And they write, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I laughed through much of it. The sight of Brad Pitt sword fighting like he's in a kung fu movie made me howl. Since when is ancient Greek sword fighting akin to East Asian martial arts? The 9 or 10 year Trojan War is condensed to about 2 weeks, and Achilles, who had a male lover in Homer's epic about the Trojan War, is made safely hetero for the homophobic audience of our modern age. Achilles refused to fight at one point and was only convinced to return to the battle when his lover was killed by Hector. In the movie, none of these key facts even exist. There is way too much graphic violence, no story. Way too many errors in what little story there is. Forget this one. Let's just wait to see if Oliver Stone does a better job with his epic of Alexander the Great and ignore this Hollywood farce. Bad
Oh,
news, buddy.
yeah, I don't think that guy's gonna like the Oliver Stone movie very much.
I got
Yeah,
some bad
I will
news.
say that if you didn't pick up on what was going on with Achilles and his cousin at all, that's on you, man. Like the movie did, I think, a pretty good job of like at least hinting at it, you know? Like, um, But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's what they do with movies. They try and make them palatable to the people they want to pay to go see them. Like, I don't know, like, and then what was the first part he was talking about before the whole like Brad Pitt and his lover thing?
Brad Pitt's amazing kung fu abilities.
Oh yeah, because do you know how they used to fight wars back in ancient Greece?
Tell me, Jim.
They would literally get into like these really tight formations and they would just like push into each other and like eventually somebody would give up and they'd be like poking spears through there, but like it would be almost like watching like the line of scrimmage in a football game is what was happening in wars back then. And they show it a little bit when they do that like tortoise maneuver with the shields in the beginning.
Yeah.
But guess what, guys? That's really boring. I don't want to watch a whole battle of people like pushing into each other and poking a spear every once in a while. I want to see them do kung fu moves because it's like a movie. Like, I want to see something exciting and visual on screen. I don't want to see historically accurate warfare.
But also, like, I just couldn't imagine like sitting down to watch this movie, see Brad Pitt do that like sick jump into like stabbing that guy in the neck and then just walking away and not being like, that's the sickest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Like,
Like
and
that
like,
looks awesome. Like I don't care if that's really what they did. Like that looks fucking sick.
right. Isn't it kind of the point of the movies to put things on screen that aren't possible? Like, isn't that kind of what we're doing here? Like,
You would think,
if,
Jim.
if I wanted reality on the screen, great news. I live in reality. Like, I can just
I
go
got
see
news for you.
reality whenever I want. Like,
I got news for you about reality.
yeah,
Sucks.
yeah, right. I'm there to escape. I'm there to see like flashy camera tricks and cool over the top things. Like, I don't know.
We got a couple tenors here, Jim. And I notice a running theme in the tenors for a lot of other movies are creepy dudes, like just oogling over hot girls in these movies. So now,
Oh boy.
when we have a movie with half naked guys, will we get the opposite? Will we have any thirsty girls commenting
Ooh.
on some abs here? So we got our first review here from Cat
Over under,
Princess.
hold on, hold on. Over
Yes.
under on the number of times you say the word yum in these 10-star reviews. I'm gonna say it's over one. I think you're gonna get to it at least twice.
All right, I guess we will find out. But Cat Princess 69 writes,
Oh God, what a name.
Troy is like so awesome. I definitely recommend that you see it. The story is awesome, the actors are awesome, and the music is awesome. The action sequences are so awesome. And I even cried when Troy was burning, and a few other parts too. Brad Pitt, Orlando Bloom, Eric Bana, all of them were awesome in this. Even newcomer Diane Kruger. I love this movie, especially when Orlando Bloom and Eric Bana are half naked. LOL, exclamation point, exclamation point. And I didn't really like Brad Pitt before, but I love him now. He is sexy, exclamation point. If you don't like one of the actors, all you have to do is see this movie and you'll love them. Seriously, I'm crazy about Brad Pitt now. He is one of my top 10 hot guys. He's awesome.
All right. Now I know what you're thinking, Reddit commenters out there who agree that you need to like measure the size of the helmets and use big words in your long-winded rants about nonsense. I get what you're saying. The people on my side are stupid. But but what if we just think for a second about how awesome this movie is? Because I think you need to use that word at least 10 times to describe it in a way that really encapsulates what Troy is.
She kept it bare. She didn't need to add any superlatives on it, like awesome sauce or anything like that. She just stuck to the point at hand that it was awesome.
Yeah, I also like very funny. that, was, that was very funny. That almost makes me wonder if it was a troll because it's just like too on the nose, you know?
I'd like to live in a world where Cat Princess 69 just really down to earth and just awesome and just loves life.
It's such a tragedy that we can't go look at comment histories on
You know,
IMDb.
like the fact
It's
that
an
I can't
absolute tragedy.
that I can't click on their username and see everything else that they have to write. I would love to know what else she thinks is awesome in this world. We have our next person here, Jim, and they write the best movies so far for 2004. Well acted with a strong cast. No one is weak in their role. This will be Brad Pitt's breakthrough role. Pretty sure that happened already, guy.
Yeah, when did Fight? When did what's a movie Brad Pitt was in before this? When did Seven come
Yeah,
out? He wasn't in
Seven,
Fight Club. Oh yeah, he
Thelma
was
and
in Fight Club. When
Louise,
did Fight
yeah,
Club come out?
Fight Club, 12 Monkeys, all of these happened before. Ocean's 11, all of these happened before Troy.
Yeah. He was in Ocean's 11, which was like a team up movie star movie before this movie came out. Like he was already a movie star.
This guy continues. The director keeps a great pace between the action personalities and the film's development. Fast, yet not too fast, where the viewer can absorb the movie. The fight between Hector and Achilles is a present day classic. It will be copied and remembered for years. The script shows the actions and characters as human who thought and believed before Christian time. What? Continues. 3D characters who are both bad and good. This is not a good guys and bad guys script, more like a reality investigation. I am sure with time and filming some parts were wrong or shortened, but I gained a better understanding of history. I wish you the best, Wolfgang, and keep making these believable portrayals instead of bombarding the viewer with politically correct agenda. 10 out of 10.
All right. So I know what you're thinking, Reddit commenters who measure the helmets and say that historical accuracy is important. It's important because dummies are going to see it and think it's history. Okay. You're okay. The people on my side are maybe a little bit stupid, but I'm just saying, like, that doesn't make you right. Like, you're both stupid as far as I'm concerned. Because it's crazy to me that somebody's like, I went and saw this Hollywood movie and now I have a better understanding of history. It's like, no, I promise you, you don't. Like,
Finally, a movie for us regular people, a movie that will break Brad Pitt into the stratosphere, a time that
yeah,
shows us before Christian time, like,
right,
and just
right.
gives me a better understanding of a non-politically correct history.
Yeah. It's. I think after this movie, I've learned we need more Brad Pitt and less Christianity. It's like,
And then we have one last one here. And Jim, this one is a mouthful. So get ready, but my God, Jim, it floored me when I read it, and I knew that I had to bring it to the forefront here for
oh
you.
gosh,
I think
oh
you will
gosh.
I think you will love this one. They write, when I was a film major, I groaned inside whenever my classmates attempted to instill political themes into whatever movie was up for discussion. Well, sometimes they could be right. Troy is definitely a movie with a contemporary political subtext. Growing up,
Ooh.
I used to read Greek mythology. I grew up believing the Greeks were the good guys, out to rescue the fair Helen from the nefarious Trojans. I also grew up believing that America was always the good guy in
I
any
bet you
conflict.
this guy's gonna spell Iraq right.
The invasions of Grenada, Panama, and Iraq sure dispelled that belief, both for me and for a lot of the world. Watching the movie, it struck me fairly quickly that the Greek invaders were symbolizing the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Agamemnon is clearly George Bush Jr. seizing the convenient excuse of Helen's abduction as rationale for the invasion he wants more than anything. Odysseus seems to be Powell, the only one of the Greek kings with any integrity or real intelligence. When Odysseus protests, the men still believe the war is being fought to help Menelaus rescue Helen. Agamemnon coldly replies that the invasion was never about Helen. One can easily imagine Powell being similarly rebuffed by Bush Jr. Agamemnon is obsessed with destroying Troy as a means to increase his power. Notice how Agamemnon is always accompanied by his two vassal kings, and now analogous to how Bush Jr. rarely acts without Rumsfeld or Cheney.
Oh my god.
Achilles then comes to represent the American fighting man. He is the one who actually fights, who actually faces danger. But Agamemnon, like Bush, sits back in safety and gathers the glory for himself. When Achilles points out that Agamemnon had done none of the fighting he claims credit for, Agamemnon merely gloats. Achilles is more than willing to commit atrocities, but he is also capable of noble acts. Agamemnon, like Bush Jr., denounces any attempt at negotiation. The one time he does pretend to negotiate, when Paris challenges Menelaus, Agamemnon intends to break the pact. Again, consider how we now know that Bush had no interest in any negotiations or cooperation with Iraq. The Trojans have strong religious beliefs. The Greeks, on the other hand, give lip service to the gods and happily desecrate temples to the gods they ostensibly worship. Note that Helen soon moves into the background, almost disappearing from the story of a war that should center on her. Likewise, Osama bin Laden, the reason for the twins' invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, is rarely mentioned. Is this film anti American? In some aspects, it can be thus. After all, even when the Greeks know there is no longer any possibility of reuniting Menelaus with Helen, they continue their onslaught. Likewise, even after the world knew that Iraq had no connection to 9/11 and that there were no Iraqi weapons of mass destruction, the US continued their invasion. This film is clearly even more anti Bush in the form of the homicidal demagogue Agamemnon. That Greek king thought nothing of killing his own daughter to get his fleet underway. Has anyone seen Bush exhibit any real regret at the 700 plus American soldiers already killed in his trumped up war? Bravo, Wolfgang Peterson. Bravo, David Benioff, for speaking truths that are increasingly hard to say in America.
Oh my God. So, first of all, I apologize. My dogs were just as angry about that as I was about a halfway through. So I didn't catch a couple of sentences in there because they can be very loud. Um, but I was kind of with them for like the first two sentences because I do think that it's hard to argue that there's not parallels to be drawn in 2004 between like Greeks invading Troy and the US invading Iraq and Afghanistan. I think that there's at least similarities there, and it makes sense to me that somebody making a movie in 2004 would like be talking about that, you know? Where they lose me is when they start like fan casting the Bush administration, like when they're like Odysseus is Colin Powell, which is wild to me. Like, just, I never thought I would read those words anywhere. And, like, the part they really lost me when they were like, Odysseus is the only one acting with any integrity, because, like, is Odysseus not, like, a total snake in this whole movie? Like, is it just me, or, like, is he, like, kind of puppeteering the whole thing with Achilles? Like, he from the jump is using any words and means available to him to get Achilles to do something he desperately does not want to do, right? Like, isn't that kind of like his whole purpose in this movie?
Absolutely.
And not to mention that he's the one who dreams up like what as a kid I thought was like an amazing act of triumph, and as an adult I'm like, oh man, that was really low. They like that was a really dirty trick. Like, no
That was
way did
probably
they
the
do that.
most backhanded, like the most backstabbing thing you possibly could do is
Right, right. Like,
courtesy of Odysseus.
what if we left a gift to the gods, but really we were gonna murder everyone inside? Like, it's like, oh my God, man.
I uh I gotta say though, after reading all that, I would love to watch a remake of Troy that's just the Bush administration doing this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. They got into so many details where I was like, I think this is maybe just really on your mind right now, man. Like, I don't think
When
that like the guys were in the same boat as you.
when you're like dropping deep cuts like Rumsfeld in there, like it's like you're too deep in the weeds, bro. You gotta
Yeah,
pull
like
out.
his advisors were like Rumsfeld and Shane.
His two vassal kings, Rumsfeld and Cheney. It's like, dude, you gotta pull out, man. You're too deep.
Yeah, yeah, you've really overthought this.
Yeah. Like he's fucking comparing Osama bin Laden to Helen of Troy.
Yeah, I didn't. That might have that I might have missed that when the dogs were barking because yeah, that's like an insane thing to say.
It's like, dude, that's a leap, man. Like, you need to stop projecting when you go to the movies. Like, I need you to just turn your brain off and just
Yeah,
watch things, okay?
right. You're supposed to escape reality when you go to the movies, at least sometimes. For a movie like Troy, I think that's why I went anyway.
Yeah, like this guy's gonna show back up. He's like, dude, I just saw Garfield. Like, Garfield is Cheney. Like, it's like, dude, I
Right,
need you to stop whatever you're doing.
right. He's gonna go see Shrek 2 and like talk about how it's like the modern day, like working man's.
It's all about the tyranny of kings. It's like Jesus Christ, man. But all right, Jim, let's turn it over to our attention. Where do you fall on this, from this movie being absolute drivel and historically inaccurate, all the way up to it is a modern day parable of the Bush administration?
So, as usual, I'm gonna be somewhere in between those two extremes. Um, I mean, like, I get why some people would think it's drivel. I do think at points like it's very silly. You know what I mean? Like, it's not in the same breath as a movie like Braveheart or the original Ben-Hur for me, because those movies are like tackling a serious topic in a way that is in no way tongue in cheek and is very serious, and you can take it seriously as an audience member, right? And I don't think that's what Troy is. I do think that a lot of it is very silly. Um, some stuff that comes to mind for me is when Brad Pitt doesn't go to that first battle, which I think it's the one when Orlando Bloom and Menelaus have their little duel, and Orlando Bloom totally chickens out. Um, when they keep cutting to Brad Pitt, and he's like, he's
Just
like,
stomping
"You're
back and
too
forth.
close, pull back!" Like, and he's like, he's making all these like really exaggerated like signs of disgust. Like it's very silly, right? Like it's hard to take that seriously. But that's all the stuff that I like puts this movie over the top for me. Like those are some of the parts that I love the most because they're fun. You know what I mean? As an audience member, I get a lot of laughs out of this movie, which doesn't sound like it should work, but for me, it kind of works. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. It definitely feels like it harkens back to a type of movie where it is has this big spectacle and fun and everything, and the silliness just lends into it. Because this movie is exactly like there's so many moments throughout this movie that are so over the top silly, but they just work because it just I feel like it just taps into that primal instinct inside of us that just wants to see cool shit.
Yeah.
Like, and we don't care like if some of the other aspects of it are pretty silly. Because like one that comes to mind is when they talk about what's it, Brad Pitt's like second in command talks about, pillaging the God temple. And Brad Pitt in response just cuts the head off of the God statue with his sword in front. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's the silliest fucking thing I've ever seen. But when he does it every time, I'm like, that's fucking right, man. You stab that statue. Like,
Yeah. Or like when he takes the spear and throws it like 3 football fields and picks the guy off the horse, and Eric Bana is like, "Whoa, who's that guy?" Like,
yeah,
it's
like there is so much silliness to this movie. But I am with you. I look at that as a pro and not a con because it,
yeah,
it lends to the
100%.
fun. It lends to the fun of this movie, which is what I want this movie to be. I want this movie should be fun. It should be like loud, bombastic, like just heaping heaps of testosterone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the reason why I like it, right? Like that's why it's got so much rewatch value for me, is because it's fun, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I also kind of want to push back on the a few of the reviews you read, and the 1 star side of things said that this movie had no story.
It's
I don't
insane.
think that's true. Like I think it very obviously has a story. It's like um about kind of like I mean like it's what Sean Bean's talking about in the beginning of the movie, right? Like that's what the movie's about is his like 4 or 5 sentence intro to the movie where like our legacies are a thing we think about. It's a thing we've been thinking about for thousands of years. And you have to do some weird shit sometimes to be in a play that Homer wrote or a poem that Homer wrote. And that's how people will remember you. And it's like, is that worth it? Is kind of the question the movie's asking you. Like, what's actually important? Is it being remembered forever, or is it how you treat the people around you now, you know? So I think it's crazy to me to say that, like, when people say that this movie doesn't have a story, I think it very obviously has a story. And I think that there's a lot of layers to that too, right? Like, if you talk about, is kind of this sense of ethereal, like immortality more important than the things that you do day to day in reality and the way you treat the people around you in reality. Um, they do a nice job of layering in something we kind of talked about already with the gods, where the gods are constantly pointed at as like a silliness. You know what I mean? Like Eric Bana talks about it when they're like, we got like the bird that says tomorrow will be a great day. And he's like, guys, I don't know if we should be like deciding what we do with the city based on like the bird signs you saw. That's pretty dumb, actually, you know? Um, or like the way Achilles like completely dismisses it, and they kind of dance around that a little bit because in the mythology, like he is the son of a goddess or whatever. Um, but I don't know. I thought that it was actually a really layered and deep story. So I'm interested to see like what your opinion on that is.
I would agree with you there. I do think this movie has a lot of layers to it. And I think probably where people get tripped up in saying this movie doesn't have story is because I mean, it does have plot that propels itself forward, but there's a lot of points where it's just character work that's propelling the story because you were seeing it through the eyes of them, the central theme of that immortality and how you live your life built on that. And you see it through the eyes of Achilles, who's just doing anything he can to gain that immortality. You look at it through Eric Bana, who to him, like his legacy is just being there for his people and living a good life and being there for the ones he loves. Like, so you get this like dichotomy between the two of them that's just playing out on the grand stage of a battlefield. So while
Yeah,
it
and
feels
they're
like story doesn't propel as much, like every choice the two of them makes is in service of that belief, and it drives them closer and closer to their eventual face off.
right. And I would also push back on something you said in said from one of the reviews too, where this movie doesn't have good guys and bad guys. And I really disagree with that because I think Achilles and Eric Bana are really the good guys. And they're kind of like two sides of the same coin. Where, I mean, Eric Bana is not quite as rank and file because Hector's like a prince, right? But they're both kind of just like cogs in a wheel. Like Eric Bana is like stuck in the politics of Troy, and even as a prince, his dad is like, actually, we should listen to the bird people. You know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yeah,
like he can't really control everything. The same way Achilles doesn't really control like the things he's fighting for as much as he tries to, right? So like they're kind of the good guys to me, even if they are kind of like different answers to the things that are the bad guys, which is people like Agamemnon and people like the bird guy, like people who will use people like Hector and Achilles to get what they want, regardless of like what that means for anybody else, you know?
I would even argue in a sense that like there's villainous things of Hector's dad, the King Priam, because he just sits there and his stupidity in listening to the bird people and the
Right.
god guy gets his son killed.
Right. Like it's almost like the state itself is a bad guy in this movie. And I
Yeah.
know I'm starting to sound kind of like the
Oh,
reviews we read a little bit.
easy, easy over there, Bush.
Yeah, right, right. But like I think there's something to that. Like as somebody watching this movie, I'm like, yeah, like why would Eric Bana ever listen to that fucking idiot? You know what I mean? Like that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And he's eventually gonna get the city destroyed at the end of this, you know, because he's gonna think that this horse is important for some reason, even though they absolutely should have burned it, you know? Um and yeah,
Multiple
like
times though, because there was a moment where they listen to the gods and say we should strike out at dawn while they're on the like back burn, like we should force out. And that stupid move leads Hector to killing Patroclus,
yeah,
which then ends up getting Hector killed. And then later on, they're like, yeah, let's bring the horse in. It's like that. Why would you bring the horse in? Like,
right, right. And it's like I do think that that is kind of in the underneath of this movie where it's like why would you listen to people that when they talk to you make zero sense? You know what I mean? Like why would you ever listen to those people? Because who knows if it doesn't make any sense to you, don't do what they're saying because it's probably not a good idea, you know? Like
it's a very timely
um
advice you've got there, Jim.
yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to say anything about like what's happening in the world we live in. I just mean like as a movie, that's like a theme of a movie. You know what I mean? Like that's like a theme behind a story that is at least interesting to me, you know? So
Absolutely.
it's crazy to me when people say this has no story. I think that I think sometimes the way it's executed, and because the movie is kind of silly, it's really easy to dismiss a lot of that stuff. But I think it's there, even if they don't necessarily always do the best job of bringing it out. I think it's really there. And this is also probably a product of me having seen it 4 times in the last 3 months. Like I'm really deep
Really,
in the
you're
weeds on
you're
Tron.
really deep in the weeds on that. You're
Right,
sunk
right.
in right now. Now one of the things that didn't come up, at least in the reviews that I pulled up of IMDb, but it's one that I've always seen ever since this movie came out that a lot of people dislike about this movie, and that is Orlando Bloom's character Paris, and just the decisions that he makes in this movie and the kind of character that he is, that everyone hates on him a lot, calling him a little bitch, a pussy, amongst other words. Where do you fall on your feelings towards Paris? Would you characterize him as a coward like everyone tries to in this movie?
I mean, he's a coward, yeah, but that's his whole purpose. Like you're supposed to hate Paris. You're supposed to hate that guy. He's not necessarily a villain, but like that's the character he is in the movie. Is the guy that's there for you to be like, "Oh, dude, come on, you got to be better than that." But yeah, he's a coward. Of course he is. He like puts the fate of everyone around him behind like his lust. You know what I mean? Like which is awful. Like it's not something that somebody does in a movie and I like them, you know?
You don't buy that he actually was in love with her. You think it was just lust?
I mean, I don't know, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but how long did they really know each other before they left? You know what I mean? Like
Good
I
question. They're probably
think
there for a couple of weeks.
if you had any sense of responsibility for your position as Paris in that movie, you wouldn't risk it after like a week. Because I think that's what she says in the beginning, where
Hey,
she's like, I've made a lot of mistakes this week, you know? Like, it
yes.
seems like they probably just met, right?
I don't know. I mean, I would imagine after, how seafair travel is back then, that once they got there, they probably stayed there for a little while. They weren't like, hey, we're here. 2 days later, we're sailing back.
Yeah, maybe. But it just like, it's the kind of thing where even if you were really in love with her, I think if you were any kind of man, you would think twice about it. You know what I mean? Like before you did that.
Well,
And then like if you weren't, it's even worse, you know?
now I wonder if maybe, it tends to not play as well because it's played by Orlando Bloom and he clearly looks like a dude who's in his 20s. Because watching it this time, I don't know that I would straight up look at him as a coward as much as he is a naive boy.
Yeah, I
Because
mean that's
technically,
fair.
Paris is supposed to be like a teenager. Because Achilles in the text is 24, but we don't see that because Brad Pitt looks like he's 45.
That's
And then
also fair, yeah.
and then you have Orlando Bloom playing this, who's clearly like in his mid 20s, so he looks like he should be an older boy who should at this point know to be that kind of man, but really he's a young teenager. So I look at this more like he's naive and learning like a devastating cost to making
Yeah,
choices in life.
and I agree that he's naive, and I think actually the movie does a pretty good job of making him look like a teenager because for one thing, he is very scrawny compared to like every other male in this movie. He looks like he weighs about 70 pounds soaking wet when he's standing next to Eric Bana, right?
Orlando Bloom must have been so happy that he didn't have to do all the workouts like Brad Pitt and Eric Bana. Like he could just show up and be like, I can just do
Right,
whatever.
right, right. But like he's not just a coward because he does it. He's a coward because he does it and then he wants nothing to do with any of the consequences. You know what I mean? Like he
Well, he
pretends like he
he
does.
he does try at one point, but then he realizes very quickly that if he does, he is dead because
Right.
he is not equipped
And then
to
he runs
do this.
away because he's a coward. Like so like that's
I'm not
kind of what
saying
I
he doesn't
mean.
have cowardice tendencies, but I don't know that if I would agree with everyone that I would outright just villainize him as
Yeah. No,
Project
I mean like
all of this. Like I guess it's my way of saying that like I feel for him more watching it now than I did back in the day.
yeah, and I can get what you're saying. Like maybe he's not as much hateable as he is like a person making mistakes, right? Like so I get where you're coming from, but I do think that like for the first 45 minutes or so of this movie to like an hour or so of this movie, he makes a lot of mistakes that are very obvious to you as a viewer, and then like when he finally is gonna own up to them and then crawls away and begs for his brother to bail him out, it's like it's very hateable. It's very cowardly. You know what I mean?
I can
Like
feel that. It is very cowardly, but
it's
I would
like
imagine.
I don't know that ignorance can forgive you not understanding what was going to happen when you went out there because everybody was trying to tell you what was going to happen when you went out there. Like maybe if you just like admitted you were ignorant and listened a little bit to your brother who was clearly much smarter than you, like maybe you wouldn't be so hateable. I don't know.
That's fair. I mean, all I'll say is I would also let the fall of Troy happen for Diane Kruger.
I mean, okay, that's fair. She
I,
is
I,
very pretty.
yeah, she is gorgeous, and I would also be called a sack of wine for the rest of life for letting that happen. I'll take that.
But it's also like I think he was maybe onto something in the beginning, and I can't quite remember what her reasoning was for not doing it. But like the other part I hate about it is like I wish they would have just ran off somewhere. You know what I mean? Because like they never would have actually found them. You know, like they would have been able to get away. It's not like they had like surveillance cameras back then. Like just
This is
move
true.
somewhere else. Like what?
This is true. Although I think at that point it didn't matter. Like Agamemnon was just waiting for his excuse to go for Troy. And
Yeah, right.
that was his excuse. So whether they got on a ship and sailed somewhere else instead of going to Troy, like he still probably would have just went to Troy and been like, "Yeah, we're gonna burn this place down."
Yeah, but that's the most maybe the most hateable part about Orlando Bloom is when he tells Eric Bana what happened and they're on the boat and they like argue, right? Eric Bana figures it out in about a minute and 30 seconds where he's like, "Oh yeah, it doesn't actually matter if we bring her back or anything. Like we just gave this guy exactly what he wanted." You know what I mean? Like to be in that world and just be so ignorant to the people you're dealing with and the moves you're making. I hate it so much, you know?
It's fair. It's fair. Now, he definitely still has plenty of tendencies of it, where I can see all of that. One of my favorite parts about this movie, and it's something that we talk about ad nauseum here at Front Row Cinema, is nothing gets my jollies going harder for a movie than great quotable dialogue.
I was gonna say we got to talk about the dialogue at some
And
point.
this movie has so much quotable dialogue. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Like,
two classics right off the bat.
yeah,
When they're first sailing to Troy, and Brad Pitt makes the speech about getting onto the beach, and he ends it with the "immortality, it's yours, take
take
it."
it. Yeah, and
And also
fantastic.
when he's fighting Hector and he says the line, "There are no pacts between lions and men." Like those are the two that
And
are
then
like
just
really top notch.
takes his helmet off and just goes, and now you know who you're fighting, Prince.
Yeah,
Like,
right, right.
absolutely incredible. I think one of my favorites, and it just goes to how absolutely sassy Achilles is when the boy in the beginning goes to get him. And he's like, "Are you really going to face that man? I couldn't face him." And he just looks at this young child and just goes, "That's why no one will remember your name." And just
Yeah,
rides off. Like,
it's amazing because you understand exactly who Achilles is at that point. Like you understand exactly who he is. And it also ties so well into what we were just saying the whole movie's about. Like Achilles is the guy who is like my name being remembered is the most important thing. It's the only thing I care about, you know? And like I think most people wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And I think him being such a giant dick to that kid is a way for you to be like, "Oh yeah, I don't think I do agree with Achilles." You know what I mean? Like it gets it in your head that he's like too brash in a way. I don't know.
no, absolutely. It's just a fantastic piece of dialogue. One of my
I
other
also
favorites
go ahead.
is when he first meets Eric Bana in the temple, and Eric Bana's like, "Face me," and he's like, "It's too early in the morning for killing princes."
Yeah.
He's like, "Go home, make love to your wife. Tomorrow we'll have our war."
Yeah. Well, and I love his reasoning in that scene specifically because it doesn't matter what time it is actually, right? The reason he doesn't want to fight him there is because nobody's going to see it. Like he says it
No
straight
one's
out.
no one's
Like
around to
it
watch.
shows
Why
it
kill you
shows that
here, Hector of Troy, when there's no one around to see?
right. It shows how they're both sides, like different sides of the coin, because they both do want to have the fight. Like Eric Bana's like, all right, dude, like let's do this. Like you're the guy I'm supposed to fight. If this was an anime, you'd be the guy.
Right.
Like we're gonna show down, you know?
So good. And
Um, and Eric
normally,
Bana would
yeah,
do it in the dark in a temple hallway when there's no one else there. Achilles wouldn't, you know what I mean? And like it's a very cool way to show that difference between the two of them.
it's fantastic. And now, and normally, we talk a lot about how we hate voiceovers in movies. But I gotta say, Odysseus's voiceover at the end, when he's just like, if they ever tell my story, let them say I walked with giants. Let them say I lived in the time of Achilles. It's just like,
Yeah.
dude, it's so fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Sean Bean, great in this movie, by the way.
Oh yeah, so good.
And his character is something that I really like about this movie as a whole. Like in a movie where things are very over the top and very silly, I think he's a very subtle, interesting part of it because I really do think he's a worm in this movie. I think that he's like constantly like puppeting things to be exactly how he wants them to be, right?
Well, he
But
even
like
has that
usually,
line where he's like he's talking about he's like wars, young men dying and old men talking. Ignore the politics. Like let's just go out there and fight. Like he
right,
just keeps
right,
puppeting him.
right. And I mean to Achilles specifically, yeah, he's trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to do, like I said earlier. But like usually in a movie when and we talked about this a little bit with SWAT, right? This was a thing like where if somebody kind of felt like a worm for like the first 45 minutes of a movie, it was like undoubtedly they were going to do something overtly wormy by the end of it. Uh and I mean, I guess you could say the Trojan horse is kind of overtly wormy,
Very warmy.
but it's not necessarily like a turn. It's not like a heel turn, like the same way SWAT was, where you're like the guy who's complaining about how he doesn't make enough money and he wants to buy expensive wine turns on the team. It's like, of course he does, right? Like, there's nothing so overt as that. It just kind of leaves you with like that character to chew on and be like, is that guy a worm? I don't know. What do you think? You know, like, here's all the things he does. Like, I'm not necessarily taking a stance on whether he's a total worm or not, but I think that's a really great way to play it. I don't know.
Oh, it definitely is. They just do some fantastic work writing here by David Benioff, which is not something I would usually give him credit for after what he did to Game of Thrones, but
Yeah.
I'll
I
give him his
am
flowers
gonna
here.
I am gonna take a few like a few I have a few negatives here.
Okay, let's hear him.
I think that the whole actual fall of the city of Troy is kind of a giant mess. Like it
Okay.
feels a bit like executive soup, where they're just like, all right, the movie Troy is gonna fall, like the city is gonna fall now in the movie, and like, what are all the plot points that we need to happen? Like, how do we make Brad Pitt the center of this? You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things that I don't think quite work for the movie
It
happening in
feel
that last
it
like 20
feels
minutes.
more speed run like a Hollywood movie at that point, more
Right.
so than a culmination of like the actual way the story's been progressing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you exactly what the culmination of the story is for me. It's the moment, the scene that Peter O'Toole and Achilles have in that tent. Like that's the peak of the story part for me. When Peter O'Toole meets with Brad Pitt, and there's also some great quotable dialogue in that one.
I've just
Maybe
kissed the hands of the man who slaughtered my son.
right, right. Maybe my favorite line in the whole movie, though, is when Achilles goes, "You'll still be my enemy in the morning," and he goes, "You're still my enemy right now." Like he's like, "I don't know what you think this is. We're not friends, bro. Like ever. Like never for even a minute are we friends. But like I can at least show you some respect. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that whole scene is kind of the culmination for me." Because I think that's really hammers home for Achilles the whole difference between like, well, does it matter? Like, everybody would still remember my name if I slaughtered this guy in my tent right now. You know what I mean? Like, I'd still be famous. People would still be talking about me on stupid podcasts thousands of years from now.
Shout out
But is
Achilles.
that really what's important in this moment? Or is it that I show this other human being who is my peer and my, like, we're alive at the same time, that I show him respect? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think it's kind of just like everything after that point feels like very hollow and almost like homework compared to like the emotional heights they hit in that scene for me.
Well, you tend to get at that point now. It's we need to finish the story. We need to wrap up all the plot points. We need to do the Trojan horse. And I guess it makes sense as it's feeling tacked on because technically I don't remember because I read the Iliad so long ago, but I'm pretty sure the Iliad does not end with the fall of Troy.
I don't know. Well, no, there's the Iliad and then there's the Odyssey. The Odyssey is all about Sean Bean's character getting home from the Trojan
Troy.
War.
Yeah, but that's not what this they didn't use anything from the Odyssey.
No, I know, but is there more to the Iliad after Troy ends? Isn't that kind of like what the book is about? Like
Don't
the poem is about? Like
I
the
don't
war
think
that
so.
happens there?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm gonna have to read it again. It's been a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah. I may have to read it for the first time.
Yeah, you want
That sounds like a slippery slope to me complaining about inaccurate helmets in
I mean, you
movies.
wouldn't
So,
want to be
so I
roped in with
don't
all
know.
those other ignorant Americans who don't even know what the Iliad is, Jim.
I'm
Join me,
listen.
brother.
I'm the kind of ignorant American who's at least heard of it. So there's that.
That's fair. Yeah, you at least have that. But you have heard of me. Yeah, I don't know that I have so many negatives about this movie. Most of it would just be nitpicks. I get what you're saying though about the end. It does definitely feel like they're putting that Hollywood spin on the end.
Yeah, and it's also like a long movie, so the end feels like kind of a chore for me, I guess is how I would put it. Like, because I've been in this for so long and I just kind of reached what for me is the climax, now it's like I have to go through these paces for like what the studio exec thinks is the climax. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay.
You're going through like speed running a bunch of beats where it's like, oh, the concubine stabs Agamemnon and kills him. Like Paris shoots Achilles through the Achilles heel, which that's my thing. It's like it's so on the nose. It's like come on,
Yeah,
come
well, but
on.
that's where I feel like they fall into the trap of like we need to have real things that happened in the Iliad in this movie no matter
Yeah.
what. And I don't know if Paris actually fires the shot in the Iliad, but I know that's like the famous thing is that Achilles gets an arrow through the
Through the
heel.
Achilles heel. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like oh boy, so on the nose. But yeah, it does. The ending feels the most Hollywood esque of the entire movie. And it's like we're done. We've done away with our quotable dialogue, our like sick fight one on one fight scenes, like, and now we're just kind of like we just got to get to the end. So we're gonna bum rush through all this.
Yeah.
So I feel yeah, at the end does feel kind of sped run, but it doesn't hamper the movie much for me.
Yeah, same. I mean like I this is still a movie I look back on very fondly. Let me put it that way.
Same, absolutely. And you'd be hard pressed to find a better action scene than the one on one fight scene between Achilles and Hector.
Yeah, it's
It's
intense. It's intense.
it's so good, and I love like what makes it so good and so like different from everything you see today is that one, the actors took the time to learn the moves so well that we didn't have to do what movies today love to do, which is quick cutting up all of the action into close-up shots and shaky cam so that you don't see the fact that it's not the actors doing it. It's
Yeah.
something that every movie does today in action scenes besides John Wick, like, and I can't stand it. And it's so refreshing to watch this movie and just seeing so many just medium and wide shots of these two just like clanging away on each other.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, and I mean, I do. We didn't talk much about it, but that fight scene is pretty great. Yeah, it is kind of intense and shot really well. I agree with that.
And it just builds and escalates really well. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Just a fantastically done shot, and I love it. I just love this movie. Anything else you feel like we haven't touched on?
Nah, I think we about covered it. Nothing I can think of right now, anyway.
All right, where are we going next, Jim? Where are you taking us into the land of IMDb?
So I think we want to talk about awards. I'm gonna try and keep this shorter than it's been in previous weeks because I've been starting to pick up on me kind of just reading categories and nominees, and that's kind of boring, I think. And I noticed you feeling like you wanted to move on in a couple of previous episodes, and I agree. I agree. So we're gonna keep this short and sweet. We're
Okay.
just gonna say that it won. There's one big interesting win in here, and big is maybe a subjective word. Peter O'Toole wins Best Supporting Actor in a film or television at the Irish Film and Television Awards.
That's big. That's a big win right there.
Yeah, I feel like I have to bring it up because it's like one of the only wins this movie gets. So
Or at
like I
least
gotta
especially
say something about it.
for acting too.
Uh, we have another interesting repeat thing here where it's a 2005 nominee for Best Foreign Film at the award of the Japanese Academy. So, like,
All
other
right.
countries are recognizing Troy in all of its greatness, which I think is good.
Giving it the respect it deserves.
I think, wasn't it Titanic won Best Foreign
Foreign
Film for
film,
some
yeah.
award show in Japan? Yeah.
Yep. So they know.
Uh,
They know what they got on their hands.
we'll check in really quick. It's nominated for two MTV Movie Awards.
Oh God.
Best Male Performance and Best Fight for Brad Pitt and Eric Bana. We're not going to go through all the nominees because that's one of the traps I think we fall into where we look at the nominees and we're like, oh yeah, we talked about the other four movies this year already. Like,
Surprised they didn't have a random nomination for like best shirtless scene.
yeah, well, we might find something like that in the Teen Choice Awards.
Best shirtless Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
All the
I
nominees
am
are true.
interested in it's nominated for one, two, three, four, five Teen Choice Awards. The only winner is Brad Pitt wins for Choice Movie Actor.
Right.
Other nominations, it's nominated for Choice Movie Drama slash Action Adventure. Orlando Bloom, not Orlando Broom. Orlando Broom is what I sweep my floors with. Orlando Bloom is nominated for Choice Movie Actor in the same category as Brad Pitt, and he loses to
Ooh.
Brad Pitt.
They didn't
The
nominate
fight,
Eric Bana. Poor Eric.
not
Poor
Eric
Eric
Bana,
Bana.
no. The fight gets nominated again, though. And then this is the most interesting one to me. 2004 Choice Breakout Movie Star. Unlike what our review said earlier in the thing, it is not Brad Pitt. It is Garrett Hedlund.
Oh, he plays Patroclus.
Okay, that makes sense because that makes sense that he's nominated for a Teen Choice Award because he is kind of just like a pretty face in this movie, right? Like
Pretty
that's kind
face
of
of
why he's
the
there.
cousin who is not homosexual with Achilles.
Yeah, and then right, but he also like very clearly is like
Yeah.
when Achilles like pats him on the butt with his sword, it's kind of like okay, there's something going on here, right? Like
Like they
there's
might not be
something weird
showing it.
about
They
this.
might not be showing it to you, but I'm sure it's still going. Although I'm on their side. I would say like Troy, don't be cowards. Like let him kiss the boy.
Yeah, I mean, if it was 2024 when that movie came out, they probably would have, you know.
Probably would
But
have the Garrett Hedlund and Rose Bryn in like the hut together, like in a three-way with them.
right, the problem is back in 2004, the large group of people you needed to see this for it to be successful, like, wouldn't have gone for that. I don't think.
Like not my movie.
Exactly. And then yeah, I mean, that's really it. That's really like the main highlights here.
Wasn't
It
this
is
nominated for
actually okay.
Oscars? I
Hold on,
was gonna say
hold on.
this got to the big boys.
It got to the big boys.
Yeah, wasn't this nominated for Oscars?
Oh, okay, yeah, it was nominated. Who cares about the Oscars? That's the
All
point.
right, guy,
We still
take
have
it
the big
easy.
boys. I'll bring
Let's
up the
not get
big boys in
crazy
just
here. All
one
right.
second. It was a 2005 nominee for Best Costume, Best Achievement in Costume Design, which great. Uh,
Fair, fair.
it's also nominated for two Stinkers Bad Movie Awards,
How fucking dare they?
which Brad Pitt gets nominated for Worst Actor.
False.
And also worst fake accent male, which I don't
How
was Brad putting was he even putting on an accent in this movie?
didn't sound like it. I was gonna say not one person tries to do a Greek accent in this movie. Like,
Right. So I don't know. Like I do think he was maybe trying to put on an affectation of kind of being like epic, you know, like a
yeah.
little bit, but I don't think he was putting on an accent. I think that's a weird one.
It's a weird thing to
And finally, the Yoga Awards.
What?
I don't know what the Yoga Awards are, but this is an interesting twist. Brad Pitt gets nominated for Worst Foreign Actor.
Oh, dare
And
they.
it's one of those like combo ones where he gets nominated for this movie and Ocean's 12 in 2005.
What award show is this? We're gonna have to go over there and have a word with them
The
because
Yoga Awards?
that's so
I'm gonna look really quick
that
and
is
see if I can
slander
figure
of the
out.
highest accord, and I will just absolutely not stand for it.
I don't even know what the Yoga Awards are. Like, why is it a foreign thing? It's got to be some other country, right? I don't know. We'll get back to you on the Yoga Awards. I'll get back to you. I have no more information at this time.
It's actually just Sparta in disguise. It's Agamemnon from beyond the grave.
Right.
I don't think so.
And then, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is there any actors you would want to talk about? Like, I feel like the
Everyone
really,
in this we're really going to come across again. I guess the
right.
biggest thing that we can know, we won't really dive into any actors, but it's been a minute since we've been able to do it. There's a couple of that guys turning up in this from the get. Like I completely spaced that Rose Bryn is the concubine, and she would go on to be a huge star now in movies like
Yeah,
Neighbors.
she's in that movie with Seth Rogen, right? The sorority,
Neighbors,
like
Neighbors.
fraternity movie? Neighbors, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's everywhere in like comedy movies now. So she went on to be huge. Like you already mentioned, Garrett Hedlund. This is a breakout year for Diane. How does Garrett Hedlund win that award and not Diane Kruger? She
Right.
puts out
Also,
Troy this
National
year
Treasure,
and
right?
National Treasure. Yeah, like, and she's a national treasure. So how dare you, MTV?
Okay, I take it back. I think we're going to talk about the director here.
Wolfgang Peterson.
Yeah,
Wolfgang.
Wolfgang Peterson, because there's a couple of interesting things in here. Oh, wait, did we talk about him for The Perfect Storm?
I do not remember. I think we did. We
Okay.
did, and we went up to Troy when we were talking about him, and then we stopped. Yes,
Okay.
because we talked about Das Boot. Das
Right,
Boot?
right. Right, and Enemy Mine I definitely would have brought up, which
Yeah.
is it was a fun movie. Air Force One we definitely would have talked about. Outbreak from 1995 we definitely would have talked about. If we stopped at Troy, the question I have for you, and I know that we're going to get into this at some point because I know for a fact this is a movie I saw with you.
I
Do you take Troy
already know
or
what movie you're gonna
2006's Poseidon?
say. Fucking
What
Poseidon.
isn't is that that's not Quaid, that's Kurt Russell, right?
It's Kurt Russell, yeah. Kurt
Yeah,
Russell,
okay.
Josh Lucas, stacked cast in that movie. No, Troy, easy win.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know
Troy,
about that.
Troy,
I think
easy
I'm
win.
taking Troy, but I am interested to see when we get to our Poseidon episode. Because talk about a movie I never thought I would
I
watch again.
I promise you, you are overestimating Poseidon's rewatchability. I
When was the last
promise
time
you.
you watched Poseidon?
Not, I want to say it was within the last 3 years because I showed it to Heather
Wow.
because she's in on disaster movies. So we were going through all the disaster movies. And once you get through all the good ones, the only other place to go is Poseidon.
Yeah, or like Geostorm.
Yeah, or Geostorm
Have
and movies
you,
like that.
you know what? We'll talk about it when we get to the Poseidon episode because it's in 2006. It can't be too far away.
Too far yonder. But
Um,
yeah, Jim, Troy, absolutely.
yeah, I'm with you. I'll take Troy, but I do want to like, I do kind of want to not literally lock in. I'm penciling in Troy,
Okay.
but I want
All
to
right.
wait until we watch
You give
Poseidon.
yourself a little asterisk on the end there, and you hold out hope.
Exactly. And I think that's really it. I think that's all we really need to talk about for IMDb. We, like you said, the actors we're all going to see again. They're either like big stars or they're Diane Kruger, who I know for a fact National Treasure will be on this show, right?
Asher Treasure right around the corner. We'll see her in a little while.
Yeah.
All right, Jim. So I think with that, then we're ready to turn our attention to our star ratings.
I'm Roger Ebert. In a scene from the best film of the decade. This is a great film.
If you dare not give the Roger Ebert drop to Troy, I don't know how we can continue our friendship. What do you think Raj would have to say on Troy?
I think Raj would have, I think he would give it like 3 out of 4.
You're just on the outside, Jim. Raj actually only gave it 2 out of 4.
Oh
He
no,
writes, Pitt.
Raj hated it.
Yeah, he writes, Pitt is modern, nuanced, introspective. He brings complexity to a role where it is not required.
That doesn't sound.
Jesus Christ, Raj.
Yeah, wow. Raj was like, listen, just make the popcorn movie. What are you guys doing?
Rare L take from the Raj.
Yeah, I don't know. That's such an interesting way to put that. He brings complexity to a role. I wonder if he's specifically mentioning when they're attacking the city and Pitt is like, "Rah, get back, pull back." Like, I wonder if that's his like very like collegiate and kind of subtle way of saying he's overacting in this movie.
Just like, what are you doing, pretty boy?
Yeah, right, right. Just look pretty and stab things. Like
That's
that's why you're here.
why my ass is in this seat.
Which I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying there. I do disagree with the score because I would give this movie a 4 out of 5. I think it basically delivers. This movie gets the Doctor Dolittle award, I think. Like where it's a 4 out of 5 because of things that aren't necessarily good that I really enjoy, but I also think there's a lot kind of like deeper under the surface for this movie that I think I put it this way earlier where it doesn't quite hit like a 5 out of 5 level, but enough of it's there, and if you watch it 4 times in a couple of months, you'll like start to really pick all that stuff out. So I would give it a 4 out of 5. I'd give this a pretty high score. I think it's a really good movie.
Jim, I'm going to echo those sentiments. I also give it 4 stars. I like watching pretty boys and gals stab people in the sand and say dope lines of dialogue. I'm on board. You got me. That my lizard brain is fully on board. So
Totally.
I'm going for it. So with a 4 out of 4, we're taking ourselves to a score of 8. It's time to do battle with some eights, Jim. So are you taking Troy or are you taking old school?
Troy.
Yeah, it's an easy one right there. Are we taking Troy or are we taking Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets?
Troy.
I'm also taking Troy. Are
Yeah,
we
if you
taking,
said the first Harry Potter movie, I'd say that one easy, but Troy beats the second one.
yeah, no, the first one sitting with a 9, so they ain't doing battle. Are we taking Troy or Seabiscuit?
Oh man. Uh, that's really tough. I think I might make you go first for that one. What are you thinking?
Um, I am still gonna take Troy over Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit was awesome, and I did really enjoy it. But the Sword and Sandal epic speaks to me more than a sports movie does. And the quotable dialogue of Troy puts me over the edge because there's not really any quotable dialogue in Seabiscuit. So I think that's going to give me the edge there.
Yeah,
I know
I
what you're
mean,
going to say. You're going to talk about the film reels giving you quotable dialogue because you love the film reels in
I
Seabiscuit.
mean the film reels are up there, but then there was also a couple of things that Jeff Bridges said to Tobey Maguire. I think I'm gonna take Seabiscuit just because I think it's kind of unique. Like, I think Troy is like borderline schlock for sword and sandal movies, and I think we're gonna be hard pressed to find anything even remotely like Seabiscuit in our whole 1,000 movies that we go through in this. So I'm gonna take Seabiscuit, although I do want to keep going through the eights.
You mean a sports movie about a horse? You're going to be hard pressed to find something else like
No,
that?
no, not just the sports movie
Or
about a horse, but this sports movie about a horse. Like, and yes, the film reels, yeah. Like, I don't know that there's a lot of movies I've seen that at times you wonder if you accidentally clicked on a Ken Burns documentary, and I think that's a positive. Like, I think that's like a plus because there, like, that's something I've never seen in a movie, and I don't know that I will ever see again. Where I like literally 10 minutes into it, I'm like, wait, did I put on the right movie? Like, is this like, did I make a giant mistake here? Like, do I need to go back onto my streaming site? So, like, I don't know. I'm taking Seabiscuit. I would like to go continue to go through the eights, and I do think that's one of the tougher picks that we've had in this whole battle at the end of the episodes.
all right, so they'll tie themselves right now in the 16 spot. There were three more eights ahead of Seabiscuit.
Okay.
So the first one up would be How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Troy.
The second one would be Signs.
Oh man. Signs. I'm taking signs.
And then the top of the eights right now is A Knight's Tale.
Um, Dang, that's tough too. I would probably take Troy. You didn't answer for any of those last three, so I'm interested to see what you have to say.
I would take Troy over all three of those, and I would have brought Troy all the way up to the top of the eights.
Wow, you'd put Troy at the top of the eights.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
what I'm learning is that I severely underestimated how much I liked Seabiscuit the last time we talked about this. Because I do think both of those are pretty near the top. But it's like, it's very interesting to go through movies we all really liked. Because
You think
it's
just
hard. I don't know that I would answer the same way if you asked me this like a month from now. You know what I mean?
it's a constantly ever changing order. It really is just catching you in the right frame of mind for a day. But Troy, for me, especially I talk a lot on my end that rewatchability is always a big factor for how high a movie rolls up for me, which is, a big reason why A Knight's Tale is at the top of the eights because that movie is effortlessly rewatchable.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
Troy feels that way for me too. It's just effortlessly rewatchable, watching just big dudes just sword fight and say cool, badass lines. So that always is going to rate particularly high for me. So that's why I would sit at the top of the eights for me, at least. We're
Yeah,
not
that makes
taking
sense.
yeah. And we're not taking a guess for next week because we already figured it out in the box office. We're diving into Shrek 2, baby. The original Shrek sits on our list in the top 25 at the number 24 spot right now with a 7 out of 10. So the question will be is how high will Shrek 2 go up on this list?
If I had to guess, I'd say it's gonna beat it because I remember people liking Shrek 2 a lot more than Shrek 1.
I mean, not only do people like Shrek 2 more than Shrek 1, Shrek 2 is often cited by many people as one of the best animated films ever made.
Right, right. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm like, because I will say when we went back and rewatched the first Shrek, it was fun, but I don't know that it was anywhere nearly as good as I remembered it being. So I'm also interested to go back and watch this one and see what I think of it.
Do you have a recommendation to leave the people with? What was the last thing you watched?
I saw Love Hurts in theaters
God,
earlier this week.
I was really hoping since you texted me that you would watch something else.
No, I mean, this was just a couple of days from when we were recording this. I understand that it's bad, and I understand that it's kind of just like a crappy movie they threw together for Valentine's Day, but I kind of liked it. I kind of had a good time watching it.
Your
Like,
lizard brain got the best of you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My lizard brain is winning more and more these days.
I
But
mean,
I
listen,
don't,
I'm
there's not
happy.
really much to chew in on that movie.
Yeah,
So what have you been watching?
I'm happy you enjoyed it. Is what I'll say to that.
Thanks, buddy.
You were able to get some enjoyment out of that. So the last thing I watched is actually I haven't watched these since I was a kid. Often regarded as some of the best movies, or at least the first one is. And I had just seen the trailer for the new Karate Kid movie.
Ooh,
And it's bringing everything together, the Cobra Kai show and all the other Karate Kid movies. And I was like, I've never actually gone back and rewatched those since I was a kid. Like I don't remember anything about them other than Miyagi trains him. Like I remember the wax on, wax off from the first one, and that's it. I
right,
remember
right, right.
nothing else. So I went back and I watched Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3 in
Dude, the
one night.
first Karate Kid rules so hard.
The first Karate Kid is just a fantastic movie. Like
Yeah,
from start to finish, no notes, just incredibly well done.
yeah, it's perfect.
This second one is an absolute fever dream. It is
Yeah, where
fucking
they
insane.
like go back to Japan, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that the idea?
yeah, they go to Japan and Miyagi like deals with his dad dying while also dealing with like a blood feud that he had that made him
Yeah, they
like
fight like
flee Japan.
right, right.
Yeah,
Talk
and
about
like
executive soup. Somebody was like, the stakes for local California karate tournaments are not nearly high enough. We
not
need
high
to
enough.
like
We need life in the balance.
right,
But
right.
like the last 20 minutes of that movie are just so insane because Miyagi has like agreed to take this small child from his mother and watch him in Japan. And then the nephew of the bad guy shows up and is like, I'm gonna fight Daniel-san to death. And Miyagi's just like, Daniel-san, are you ready for this? And it's like, Miyagi, like, are you fucking insane? Like, what if he loses? How are you gonna go tell his mom?
Like this kid should be working at like the pretzel stand at the mall. Like, what are you talking about?
Like Miyagi's gonna fly home and just be like, I sorry, your son died in
He
battle.
died in
Like, what?
an ancient Japanese blood feud. It's like, well, I didn't realize that was on the menu, Mr. Miyagi. Like, what do
It's
you
so
mean?
fucking insane. And that just like the last line of dialogue of that movie is just Daniel-san like holding that guy and being like, live or die. And the guy's like, die. And like Daniel's like, wrong answer. And then just honks his nose. Then it
Yeah,
immediately ends. And dude,
yeah. Pretty wild, yeah. And also like the main thing I remember from that movie is that it starts with the karate teacher from the first one
yeah,
having an absolute meltdown
meltdown.
about
Yeah.
Daniel-san winning the tournament, which is like, man, so choice that's
He,
how that movie
he
starts.
breaks the second place trophy, like starts
Yeah,
fighting freaking the other kid.
yeah, and
Like,
if I remember, he like punches through a car window at one
yeah,
point. It's like
Jim, he
pretty wild.
punches through 2 car
Oh,
windows.
two car windows. That's twice as
Bloody
many as I thought.
bloodies both hands and then just runs off screaming into the night.
Yeah, pretty wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's a
so
great pick. And then
yeah,
the third one is like, is it?
the
I'm
third
gonna
one's
probably
horrible.
sound really dumb. Is it Hilary Swank in the third one?
No, no. So that's the fourth one called The Next Karate Kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if I've ever seen the third
I'm
one
up to
then.
that one because I've never seen that one. The third one is they just come home from Japan, and while they were away, the bad guy from the first one, like Dojo Dude, he goes to visit his friend who also works in Cobra Kai, but he's like a huge successful businessman now. And he
Right.
basically just goes, you go on vacation, I'm gonna terrorize this kid. And then he just like subtly wages war and drives a wedge between Miyagi and Daniel-san,
Oh
like
my
trying
God.
to turn Daniel-san to the dark side. It is
So crazy.
so crazy and also just hard. Like it's so bad. It's not
Yeah,
like good at all. Like it's
that
so
doesn't sound
bad
good at all.
and it's just absurd. And I'm like watching it and I'm like, I can't believe this is a franchise. Like I can't believe I'm now gonna watch like they got 6 seasons of Cobra Kai out of here. Like, what are we
You don't
doing
need
with
to watch
this?
6 seasons of Cobra Kai, man. There's no way that you need to watch 6 seasons of Cobra Kai.
Well, I'm going to because I'm a glutton
I
for
mean,
punishment.
do what you want, but just please don't try and make it sound like it's not a choice because it is.
Oh no, I'm not. It is a choice. I know it is a choice. But we'll see where it goes. Because I'm also interested to be like, how do you just tell the same story over? It's just a karate tournament. How do you tell the same story over and over again and make it interesting?
Yeah, but like, what if I told you that it's not interesting? It's a Netflix show.
Oh boy.
Like, I
Yeah.
made it about 3 episodes of Cobra Kai before I was like, nah, I'm actually pretty good. Like, I don't need to watch this at all.
Oh boy. Yeah. Netflix not a good sign, but
Right.
I'm gonna at least attempt it, and we'll see how deep in I can.
Actually, no, it was where it eventually became a Netflix show, but it started off as worse than a Netflix show. It started off as a YouTube premium show, if I remember
Oh
correctly.
boy, Jim,
Right.
please
Right.
stop
So,
saying these words.
good luck watching 6 seasons of Cobra Kai, you maniac.
Thank you. I will. It's going to be a blast. And I'm going to go watch them all in the week interim between these episodes. So I'll see you next week with my thoughts for Cobra
Yeah,
Kai.
yeah, can't wait, can't wait. You're gonna be a changed man
I
by
am.
the other side
I'm
of
going to be
this.
haunted, be all disheveled. I don't even know what day it is. It's going to be a hard day in my life. But we'll see all of you next week when we dive into the absolutely animated classic. That is Shrek 2. And as always, we'll see you at the movies.